Hey, everybody, welcome back. Little Bit of Life podcast right here with your host, Little. We did an episode a year ago with this guest. I cannot believe it's been a year already, but
Sure.
a lot has
So
changed
fast.
in a year. Like, it is amazing. We have on Nick Thompson from Love is Blind from the Netflix show. How's it going? It's good to see you and have you on again.
Thanks for having me on again. It's good to see you too. It is very, very hard to believe it's been a year.
I know. I
I
feel like we just did it yesterday. I'm like, oh my gosh, how does time go so fast?
just goes whether we're paying attention to it or not.
Yep. So, those that are listening that may be under a rock, they have never seen Love is Blind, never heard of it. Give us a little backstory. How did you get on the show? What was the show like in filming? And then we're going to get into the nitty gritty of life after because you've been doing a lot of work this past year with a lot of different things.
I have. So, wow, it's the uh the whole process for me started when I got a DM on LinkedIn in November of 2020, asking me if I'd be interested in applying to be casted on the show for season two. And long story short, lots of interviews, psych evaluations, conversations with producers, really getting to know you, what makes you tick, what you're looking for. Are you, mentally stable, allegedly, to be able to handle the show? I like to say I kind of just never thought they would cast me, so I felt like I sleepwalked right into it.
Mhm.
And then sometime it was either end of March of 2021 or early April 2021. I think it was probably end of March, doesn't matter. But I remember exactly where I was when I got the phone call that I had been cast. And I just like stopped and I really didn't expect it. And they even asked me like, "Do you have any questions?" And I was like, "No, but I'm sure I will." And that was it. It was like a few minute phone call. And next thing I know, it's just I'm there. And the whole experience, to break it down, takes place over the course of 7 weeks. And for those of you who haven't seen it, you spend about 10 days in a set where there are these things called pods, which are basically small rooms with a couch, and you talk to other people without seeing them on the other side. So there's 15 men, 15 women. You start off speed dating, and then as time goes on, you sort of rank, and based on those connections, you continue to talk to certain people for more and more time. After 10 days, I got engaged on the show. And once you get engaged, you get to see the person that you're engaged with for the first time the next day. And so, going through all of that process, you get about 25 minutes to spend with that person when you see them for the first time before you head over to a vacation spot for about 5 days. Ours was in Mexico. And so we went to Mexico, spent 5 days filming there, and then you come back home after that, and you are basically creating the rest of the content of meeting family, meeting friends, doing things together, all of the stuff that is kind of planned out for you for from the production side. So after that, 4 weeks roughly, you decide at the altar if you're going to marry this person, which is a legally binding real marriage for those of you who ask. And I said yes, and then we got married on that show. And then the next day, I like to say you get dropped right back into reality after having every single thing you do planned and manufactured for 7 weeks.
It's almost like dating on a dating app without seeing that person on steroids with a camera right in your face. Did you
100%.
believe in the process? Like, going into it, like, you had kinda like when you said, "Oh, I wasn't sure if I was even gonna get casted." So, when you did you really believe in the process when you first went into the pod, or were you just kind of like, let's kinda see what happens?"
So they do a really, really good job of selling it to you. I'm a naturally skeptical person of everything. I pretty much always think I'm being fed a narrative. And until I can like explore it and prove it otherwise, I just kind of take it as it is. Right. But they really did a good job of selling this to me. I hadn't really consumed much reality TV, but after talking with the casting agents and talking with production producers and production, and I went and I watched season one, and it had its messiness and its sloppiness, and every show has a villain, which is something that's always fun to remember that there's a reason
Mhm.
for that. And I just remember thinking, oh, like Lauren and Cameron and and Matt and Amber Barnett, I was like, they seem genuine, like real normal. Not even just them. Everyone felt normal, but they seemed like they were normal people that found like a normal relationship. So I was like, maybe this is different. And they tell you it's different. We're not looking for influencers. We're not looking for someone that's trying to be the next bachelor. We're looking for normal people that are ready for marriage that we can hopefully help you with this psychological based experience, that we can help you find love. And so you hear it enough, like all, dare I say, propaganda. You hear it all enough and you start to believe it. And I think having only one season where there was a cast, and I've talked to maybe most people on that cast at some point, but there was like a genuineness to it, and they literally didn't know what they were getting into, or how it would work, or what the process would be like, or what it would be like aftermath, or how big it would be, or how small it would be. And now I think there's so many more data points having 6 seasons out there that I think people can um, watch it. And I think there's actually even a conversation to be had, like what is the right reason for going on a show at this point, especially this one, which is 6 seasons. And as much as they scolded all the cast members and potential cast members of the future in the reunion about what the right reason is and why they should come on the show, there's definitely like a casting element that production should have, where they take some responsibility for the kind of people that they're editing, or I'm sorry, casting. And then I also think it's interesting there because when I went in there back to my season, I went in with the mindset of, I hate dating. Dating apps aren't working. I don't even want to participate in the culture anymore. And here's why. And my reasons were that I felt people just felt like they had endless opportunities. Nobody focused on actually getting to know someone, along with the other things that you can get on an app, right? Like you can just decide based on someone's looks or based on a prompt. I'm actually a rare breed that would even read the whole profile. I would look at the pictures to see what they do with their free time and their fun time, and try to see if there would be compatibility before I would message someone. But even then, it just didn't seem like people were in it for the right with the right mindset to me. And so I looked at this and I was like, for 3 weeks, I'm going to have nothing to do but focus on getting to know someone and not have any outside work distractions. They're going to have the same thing. And maybe this could work. So my mindset going was, maybe this could work based on what I had been told and what I had seen for myself in season one. And I thought maybe this could work. And I just went in with the mindset that if this works, wow, what a story, what an experience. If this doesn't and I go home the first day because I'm not connecting with anyone, then that's okay too. I stepped out of my comfort zone and did something that I probably wouldn't have done a few years earlier. So, the confidence and the resilience I felt I had. And then, everyone always asked about the edit or you signed up for it crowd and all of that stuff. My mindset on that was, I have integrity. I act within my value system for everything. So no matter what happens, I'm just going to be me, and me doesn't do anything out of character. So, there's a lot that does go into it that you do reflect on, I think, or you should in any way when you're looking at these things. But I did believe it could work. And I thought if it did, that would be great. And if it didn't, that would be okay too.
Mhm. I feel like watching season 1, it was new. It was that fresh idea that had never been seen before. And I think all of us were kind of skeptical and watching on the outside of like, oh, well, I wonder if this could work. Like you said, how could this kind of flip the dating system on its head? Because what we're doing now is not working. We're not creating those bonds. We're not creating those connections. And we're getting very vain in the swiping. And you can do that
Totally.
very quickly. Even people in relationships or marriages are starting to do that. They're starting to go and say, oh, this is a gratification. It's very quick. It's very easy to see if there's somebody that I'm attracted to. So I think the idea of it was very interesting season 1. But I feel like season 1 was like the fairy tale. It was all of, like you
Mm,
said, the normal people with the normal stories that were relatable. I feel like your season in season 2 was showing the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between in regards to the dating. And
yeah.
that is not only probably because of those that they cast, but the key word is editing. And there was a lot of things, I'll say, that occurred in editing in your situation. And it
Hmm.
kind of sparked the question of, how is this affecting mental health? You guys are not just characters. You're not, sitting in front of a camera and saying, hi, welcome, because it does affect your life after the cameras shut off, which I
In
really want to
ways you
go
wouldn't
into.
even imagine. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like, so this is what I do when I talk to people who have been cast or thinking about being cast or in the process. I feel like the problem with this, and this goes out to like the you signed up for it crowd, right? And I have two takes on it. I think there's the you signed up for it that just don't know, right? Their mind would be open, their eyes would be open to hearing people explain why that's not a valid argument. And then there's the people who are doing it because they're projecting something going on inside of them. And I just don't think they're like a valid argument because they're not actually able to articulate anything that's of substance, right? It's like you're not a real person at this point. You're not trying to have a real discussion. And so
Mhm.
um, the things that you could not ever account for are really even things you can account for. So you look at it, and I remember thinking to myself before going on, I'm confident. I have conviction. I always, in my ethos, like try to do the right thing. And that doesn't mean I'm always doing the right thing, but I believe I'm doing the right thing. And I don't want to hurt people. And I don't want to, I don't really care about like clout. Like I'm going to keep doing and talking about the things I do and talk about with or without it. Right. So I had this feeling of I don't really care what the public thinks of me because I know I have integrity. Right. And so, and I know I was there for what I deemed the right reasons, was seeing if this could help me find my wife. And
Mhm.
so, that mindset going in there, you still really can't account for things. So even thinking like, oh, maybe the public won't like me, or they'll think I'm this or that, or I've always been insecure about sweating, and I've been sweating like hyperhidrosis style since I was a young kid. And I feel like, that's one of the things I'm insecure about. And that got highlighted to the whole world. Right. And um, for those of you who don't know, I was sweating profusely on my wedding day, like through my suit because it was 90 degrees out. We were outside. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. It was humid and it was brutal, and that became a thing. I didn't think I would be out there in the middle of, sweating, but then it doesn't matter, right? Like it's a minute thing, but there's so many things that go into being on a show, especially one that's as popular as Love is Blind, which is the most watched in the world, not even just in the US, but in the world. So yeah, there's a lot of things you don't really account for, or you account for, but you don't really know how it's going to impact you. You don't really know how an edit can impact you until you've experienced watching something back and being like, that didn't happen that way. Or I'm being completely misrepresented, which are things they say in the contract. They say we can defame you, we can misrepresent you, you will be subject to public ridicule. But like until you experience that, you can't really understand it. And I didn't get a bad edit. My relationship got a questionable few areas, I would say. But when you watch it back, you kind of feel like you're getting gaslit in a sense, where you're like, wait a minute, I didn't say that. Even in the pods, there's part where I'm like, I didn't say that to that person. That was pieced together. So you're just kind of like, trying your best to understand what you're getting into, but until you experience it, it's really hard to understand it and to grasp it and to think about all the potential scenarios that could happen or come out of it.
I think that's the scary part. You never know how, like you said with the contract, you don't know how you're going to be perceived by anyone, but it's also not only what you say and do, but it's how they choose to edit, which is scary because even watching from your season 2 until the completion now of season 6, it is wild of how quickly they're pumping this show out. But it's
Mhm.
because of the viewers. People want something. They want to watch something that they're able to just turn on the TV and check out of their normal life, which so many of us are dating. So it's now this almost draw of like, oh, maybe this could be what my life could look like. But seeing this progression, which brings me into talking about the UCAN Foundation, which you
I
helped
like to call it an
co-create.
escalation because
It's
it's like
scary.
these escalations of what's happening and what people are being put through. It's
Mhm.
like really scary. And now that you're seeing lawsuits and stuff come out and you're finding out like the trauma that people are enduring, the abuse people are enduring, and the fact that it's just they're getting more and more dramatic people, more and more dramatic stories. And the show that was presented, this one specifically, but I think this is the case with a lot of them, these shows that are presented as, like you said, kind of like this almost fairy tale or this thing where I can check out, or I kind of think of them like the modern day soap opera, right? Where you can
Mhm.
just go watch people be overly dramatic and realize, hey, my life ain't so bad, maybe. And so I just think these escalations are chaotic, and they're doing it for your entertainment, which is the thing that I want people to take away and remember is like when you see this and you see someone's mental health get destroyed or someone get berated at the reunion when they're asking to leave and they've had a panic attack, that's all for your entertainment. And you got to check yourself and be like, am I okay with manipulating, damaging, hurting people so that I can be entertained? And if not, like, please help us join this fight to change this industry and make it a little more ethical. And at the very least, give people some basic aftercare support.
Mhm. It's not just for those listening, it's not just for the show Love Is Blind. I mean, we've seen this huge escalation, as you say, with things such as The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, all of the reality shows, even ones that happened even over 10 years ago. All of
Mhm.
these people are starting to really come out and say, "Hey, this happened to me." But there was nothing that really there was no stand for them to be not only supported, but heard and believed. I think that's the hardest part. Which brings me to the UCAN Foundation. It's already turned a year old in April,
We
which
did
is
turn a
so
year
cool.
old. It is, and it's crazy to think of the progress we've made, and I one thing I wanna add about the people that have been vocal in the past, most of the people that would speak up would be someone who had a villain edit, right? And they would feel compelled to speak up just like any of us do when we feel like we're misrepresented or not being heard, and I think that kind of gave people audiences and cast members, it gave people almost like an out to not believe them, right?
Mhm.
Because, well, they were just mad they got the villain edit, or they were just mad that people were bullying them, or they were just mad they didn't get the opportunity to go, make a bunch of money on brand partnership and stuff like that. But so I think what we're doing with UCAN, which is a year old and crazy to think that, but the UCAN Foundations, the Unscripted Cast Advocacy Network, we're a nonprofit organization that's really fighting for change in this industry and advocating for change and taking the steps that we've laid out to really force change in an industry that's gone completely unregulated from labor law, completely unregulated from any type of regulation, and get some of that change so people have basic protections and labor rights and the ability to speak about their working conditions and tell their story about what really happened. Because right now, due to these contracts and NDAs, people can't tell the truth. You cannot talk about production. You cannot talk about something that didn't get shown on the screen without fear of legal retaliation. And on top of that, there's some change, some positive direction change that we've seen with shows like Love Is Blind offering mental health support post show. There are some very unrealistic and I would argue illegal caveats to that support, but it's there where it was very, very vague, and I felt like it was unavailable to me in my time. So we're also taking the stance of we can help reality cast members find mental health support. We have hundreds of therapists in our network across, I believe, all 50 states. And then we also have provided legal support for several cast members who have found themselves either in legal trouble or wanting to take legal action for something that happened to them during production.
That's
So we're helping with
amazing.
that too.
That's amazing. I think so many of us it's not just due to I think it's a lack of education. We're just not aware because like you said, unless you've been through it, you don't understand. Mental health is a huge topic across all platforms. But I think with reality TV, we see you on the outside for how you were shown to us, not for who you are, but how you were shown to us. Which brings me to the question of mental health. So many think with reality, because we talked about this last year on your episode of oh, you're on a reality show. Life is going to be fantastic. You had the complete opposite effect of after you got off the show, post show, how your life looked versus before your life when you went on the show. Can you talk about that a little bit of kind of how this bombshell kind of just imploded of now this is my life and how do I handle it because I chose to be on a show?
Oh man, I mean, I could talk about this with you for probably like 5 days. It's interesting because um, when you have what I'm now, I've added a fourth. I used to say there's like three real big pressure cookers that are happening for me or when you go on this show. The first one is the anticipation, like, am I going to get cast? Which again, like I gave very little brain power to because I literally didn't think they would ever cast me. Was, I was like trying to talk them out of it. I'm like, I'm not dramatic. I'm direct with my communication. I know exactly what I want. I'm not going to be able to be manipulated. I'm not going to drink to the point where I'm a crazy person, like all that stuff. And, still here we are. But, so there's that first piece. And then there's that piece where you're like on the show. And like I said earlier, it's 7 weeks and every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, you're making life altering decisions. And that is a huge pressure cooker environment. And then there's the anticipation phase that comes after that, whether you were on it for 3 days, whether you were on it for until the altar or however long your time on the show was. Then there's the anticipation of when is it coming out? You have no idea. What is your edit going to look like? How much or how little are you going to be featured? And what is my life going to be like after? And so you're sitting in this pressure cooker while, in my case, I had a brand new marriage that, was out of the gate. We were, trying to make work. And again, it's like you get dropped right back into reality and you don't know how to integrate your lives together in any kind of normal way, let alone, build on some of the good that came out of it for the foundation of your relationship. Right. And so there's that process where you're just kind of like, I'm in this new marriage or I'm left this significant relationship. Now I don't know what it's going to look like when it comes out. Then there's the part where it comes out, right? And all of it is everywhere. It's literally the craziest thing in the world. You wake up one day, just the cast being announced. I woke up and I had like 7,000 followers on Instagram. I had 348 the day before. And so it's like, whoa, now people are paying attention to everything you do. And then as the show airs, you've got 3 weeks, I believe it was, where you can't be seen in public with your spouse. So it's just crazy that you're like not allowed to leave your house. And then when you go film the reunion and stuff, you've got to fly separately. Like it's a lot. And then this whole thing where people are speculating on your relationship, whether or not you're together, whether or not you should be together, judging you. The people out there that diagnose everybody without any credentials or really
Mhm.
any reason to be doing that. So there's all of that stuff going on that's impacting you personally, in my case, impacting your relationship. And it's just all eyes on you forever. And it got to the point where even when we were allowed to be out in public, it would be, well, do we want to go there? Like, that's the demo. Like I say, that's the demo that watches the show. So if we go here for dinner or we go, I remember when we went to the Wells Street Art Fair in Old Town here, and we walked down the festival once and there was no less than 100 pictures we took with people. So it's like, and that's okay. Like I understand I signed up for that. Like I just took a picture with a nice lady the other day at Target. So like you still like that, you just don't know what that's going to be like, but everybody's watching your every single move, every single post. There's Reddit threads of people that are commenting on where you are and what you're doing. And it's really like this whole world that I had no idea to that I was then exposed to. And then it all went to shit. I don't know, am I allowed to swear on this? Then
Yeah, of course.
yeah. Okay. It all went to shit and it went to shit very, very quickly. So I was served divorce papers in August of 2022. And our relationship didn't do well at all after the show came out. It was very difficult to navigate. We were trying for a year to get help from a counselor, and we did finally find one at the end, right before the show came out. But like we were having trouble finding one because it was COVID, and so it was just like we had built some really toxic habits during the filming of the show that were very difficult to try and break once we were out of that environment, because that just kind of became our own thing. Like that was how the relationship was. So we were like trying to do that. We were aware of it and we're trying to like fix that stuff. And so then when the divorce papers came, I hadn't told very many people. I still had hope in my heart that we would work it out. And just be able to take a step away and kind of get clear headed. And that ended up not being the case. And then before I could even grasp it myself, let alone figure out how to communicate it to, the larger family. And I mean, honestly, I didn't even tell my parents at that point. So a few days later, TMZ leaked it on a Sunday. And I just remember waking up to phone calls, text messages, all the stories. It was just a complete brutal, unfortunate, heartbreaking experience because I was mourning the loss of a marriage that I didn't want to lose. And a lot of people, I think, view it as, oh, it was on TV, so it's not real. It was real. And my heart was broken. And I was losing the person I believed I was going to spend my life with and planned to have a family with. And, I had gotten very close to her family and her friends, and she very close to my family and my friends. So, there was this real relationship and this real marriage that even though it happened really quickly and it happened on TV, there was a whole life that I was losing and a whole family that I was losing. And so while I'm heartbroken and, trying to get through my days, to have the whole world jump in with the commentary was an added layer that, and again, until you experience it, you have no idea. And I say this in defense of people who have made mistakes on reality TV. And I talked, recently on my podcast about Rachel Leviss, and I'm not condoning what happened or what she did or what the whole Scandival fiasco was. But, if you made that mistake or you cheated, you get to do that in the privacy of your own life without the whole world commenting on you. And most people who go through a divorce, you may get some gossip from your friends or your family or your mutual friends, but like by and large, that happens within your world. But when your world is opened up to the whole world, it's very challenging. So it became a very hard mental health thing for me to handle at that point. And then over the next few months, it was a lot of things were said about me that weren't true or that were completely left out of context. And it's difficult to talk about. I do want to clarify, like, Danielle and we're at peace. Like we have chatted. She was on my podcast. We worked through it, but there were some things said, and they were very harmful to me personally. There were a lot of commentators making comments. My friend came in from England in I forget, it was shortly after this all started in 2022, and we went to brunch with my friends. This was a brunch or a trip that had been planned for a while. Like, Danielle knew about it. We were together at the time, all this stuff. Someone on Reddit started a thread about me being a cheater because I was at brunch with my friend and other friends in a group. And it was just like this thing that took fire. And I was getting called a cheater and getting, nasty DMs of people just ridiculing me. And I didn't do that. Like, so it was very harmful. And then there were some more things that were said that were not true. And mind you, I was getting pressure from the people in my life to speak out and stop taking the punches in the face, which is very hard to do that. But I felt like I had to keep my integrity there. And I don't attack people, I attack ideas. So I wasn't going to get in the mud and sling mud at people or other reality people or my ex-wife. That's just not who I am. And there were some pretty explosive things that were said that ended up in a lot of articles being written and a lot of coverage of. And I haven't Googled myself in like a year, but if you Googled me for a while, all of the headlines were bad. They were Nick and Danielle promising bloodbath and divorce. Like, this happened and this happened. And all these people trying to get comments, People Magazine, Us, all this stuff. And I just had to keep saying no. And I did one interview where I was just basically saying, like, we're both hurt. And this is very hard, right? But otherwise, I just kept it. I took it. I ended up losing my job. I have been informed, I think maybe a few days. I'm trying to, like, the timelines get a little blurry. It was within a few days after some of the worst stuff was said about me, and the headlines were there. And so I ended up losing my job as a VP of software marketing. And it was, told it was cuts just needing to be made. But I had heard through back channels that this was part of those decisions because as a VP of marketing in a small software company, like I was the face of it to analysts, the face of it to customers. And it completely, really was the icing on the cake. In the course of 2 or 3 months, I had lost my marriage, lost my new family, then I lost my job. And my career is the thing I'm most proud of in my life because I worked so hard to get it. And I overcame, a difficult upbringing to be the first person to go to college and graduate in my family, and to go in the corporate route and to be successful, and to be a VP at like 35 years old. It was everything that I had worked for, and I hit this point after that where I'm like, I've lost everything, and now, if I don't find a way to support myself, I could lose everything. Like I could lose my house, which is probably actually the thing I'm most proud of is buying a condo. Hey, people our age, this is a difficult time for millennials and Gen Z, and buying houses it's a huge accomplishment, and it's not something that's available to everyone. So, I took some time and I realized I needed to step away from all of this because I was not okay. I had the end of the year in 2022, I was literally like, I don't want to live anymore. It was every day was absolutely brutal. And I'm grateful for a friend for that week that things were really bad, stayed with me as much as I needed. And without that, I don't know really how I would have gotten through that. So I decided at the end of 2022 I was done with reality TV. These people were not my people. The people on the internet were not my people. The people that follow me, those were my people. And I'm just gonna take a break, and I'm gonna put my life together, and I'm gonna just be myself, and I'm not gonna try and be famous. I never had any interest in that anyway. And I'm gonna put my life back together. It became very challenging to find a new job, and I turned down a lot of partnership and brand opportunities because they just didn't align with who I am and what I care about. So I really was just, I'm gonna get a new job, I'm gonna put my life back together, and I'm gonna come out of this better than I went into it. Because when I went into it, I was in my best mental, physical, everything was great. And so when I hit this rock bottom, and I kind of was like thinking what I needed to do. And it was, I need to find, obviously need to find a job. I need to really get out of reality TV. Like it's not for me. The people are not for me. It was very heartbreaking to have gone through this very public divorce. And the only people that reached out to me was Shane. And it was, it was really hard because I struggled with that. So I just needed to get out of that. And as I was starting to think and put my thoughts together and realize how messed up this entire process was from the way that they like sold it to me. Because, I say while all of this was happening in these different pressure cookers I've described, I felt like my life was happening to me and I wasn't able to be an active participant in it. And I can tell you, if you've ever felt that way, that's no way to live, and you don't have to live that way. And so when I was like, how do I take back control of my life? That was like my new thing. How do I just not feel like I'm getting punched in the face and turning around and getting punched in the face again? And so part of that again was removing myself from this. But as I started reflecting it, I actually started processing everything that had happened. I had realized how messed up it was from the very beginning. And that not only did it psychologically damage me, like I started looking back on like the way they were filming, and I started looking back on the way that we were kind of almost imprisoned, like locked in hotel rooms, shuffled around from filming location to filming location. And then, every piece of autonomy you have is gone. You don't get an ID. They take your passport. You can't leave your hotel room to go to the gym or to go outside without permission. you're filming 18, 20 hours a day in some cases when you're in the pods, and you're just like constantly on mic, constantly on camera. You don't get to go outside unless you get permission to go to the bathroom. And it was just like, I'm like, this is really fucked up. And a little like exploitative, and the fact that like we were paid very little. And then I started thinking about the mental health parts of it, and how what had happened to my mental health after going through this, what I experienced myself, but also what my relationship went through because of what they did to Danielle. And the whole way our whole relationship dynamic changed when we went to Mexico. And she had her panic attack, and they forced us to film. They didn't tell me. They didn't do anything to support her, and then they forced us to film. And that's when our toxic communication habits that we had been so good at in the pods, being able to communicate and fall in love. And she taught me how to make balloon animals through the pods, which I'd never done before in my life. And we were able to communicate exactly what we needed in a relationship, and exactly what she needed in a moment of angst or anxiety. And it's just all of that just went away. And then we were forced to film, and it just became very like clear to me that I wasn't paying attention because I was so focused on my relationship and how important that had become, that when I withdrew myself, I saw how messed up the entire process was, from the way that they start casting you even and selling you this love story and selling you this glamorous experience, and then not supporting you and not caring about the relationship. And the hardest thing for me was when I came to the thing where I was like, they didn't care about my relationship at all. I was under the guise of thinking, we're a success story. They have to care. This doesn't work without couples that work. And once I realized they didn't care about that at all, they were there to get content, and they were there to do whatever it took to get that content. And that's when I was like, this is fucking bullshit. And I got mad. And once I got mad, and I'm typically not an angry person for things other people do. I'm not a victim, but I felt like I was a victim. Danielle was a victim. And there are so many other people that have been victims here, and not choosing to be a victim. Someone chose them to be a victim. And so I started thinking to myself, when the Business Insider, which was the original expose, reached out. I was doing all my own PR through this, which was, by the way, just me not doing any. So people like, oh, we want to catch up and see if you're dating. I'm not dating, and I don't feel like catching up, was basically the response, if I responded at all. So, but yeah, and then when I walked through, so back in December when I hit rock bottom, um, I had interviewed with Dr. Isabel Morley, who's on the board of UCAN Foundation. She's a psychologist and couples therapist. She interviewed me for a few hours to write a Psychology Today story. And that was when it started clicking for me how fucked up the whole thing was. And that's when I was like, oh my God, I got to do something because I'm not okay. And then I recounted it again for this Business Insider article. And that's what gave me like so much more new perspective on it. And so Jeremy Hartwell had pitched this idea of UCAN Foundation. It looked quite a bit different than what it is and what it ended up being. But I had said no. I said, I'm not interested in taking on like big reality TV. I'm not interested in, trying to fight losing battles in my life. But after doing this and realizing the role that I felt they played in my mental health, but almost even more so what they did to Danielle and what they did to our relationship, and what they didn't do for our relationship, I will say too. And I was like, I can't let this happen to other people. I can't let a show for your entertainment ruin people's lives. And so I agreed to join and tell my story, similar to how I've told you. And it's evolved, I think, quite a bit since last time. But that's when I agreed to co-found the UCAN Foundation. And we have seen a lot of success over the last year. But I will say too, like, I've entered this new part of the reality TV experience for me, and I'm trying to get more comfortable taking like the leadership ownership role that I've ended up in here, because somebody had to do this, and I didn't want to do this. I don't want to be a leader in this. I don't want to, you know, I ended up in, I say this a lot now too, I ended up in school being the leader of projects a lot because nobody else would do it. I ended up being editor in chief of my college newspaper when no one else wanted to do it. So this is just kind of something that's in my ethos where if someone needs to say something and no one's going to say something, I guess I'll take this. And so for a year now, I've been sharing, the real behind the scenes of my story. I've been trying to give space and room for others to speak up because this isn't about me. My story's been told. The story I shared with you here, while there's new information and new findings and new reflections, like it's been told. But there's so many other stories out there that need to be told, and people need to be given the space to tell them. And I think that is where we're at now, where, as you said earlier, more and more people are speaking up. More and more people are filing lawsuits for unlawful actions of these production companies. Through UCAN and my advocacy, I have helped, I have myself, and then I have helped several other cast members file labor charges against these production companies because they have us classified as contractors, where by law, when you're classified as a contractor in this country, you don't get basic labor rights that are afforded to people who are considered employees. So based on all of the work that we have done, the recent lawsuit that settled in California around labor violations, the fact that I received a W-2, which means you're an employee, for my time filming, because by California labor law, we would be working so much that we would be considered employees. And I took all of this and filed charges myself and with other cast members with the National Labor Relations Board, who are investigating whether or not reality cast members should be considered employees. And under that classification, by federal law, if we would be considered employees, almost all of these contracts would become null and void. The NDAs would become mostly null and void. And you would be able to speak about your working conditions. You'd be able to form a union, which, by the way, in the contract specifically says you cannot. And so that's the activity that we're doing now, while also supporting cast members getting mental health services and legal support as they need it. It is not my story to tell, but I will share that Renee Poche was on season 5 of Love is Blind, and she was completely cut. Her story was completely cut. And she started speaking up about it and what that was like for her. And she got served a $4 million arbitration suit from the production company. And we helped her get a lawyer so that she could countersue based on those illegal NDAs, among other things, in her lawsuit. So we're helping people with the organization and then the advocacy work to change this industry and give people basic labor protections. Is a huge foundation of what I'm trying to do personally within my role in the organization. The
I love
long-winded answer.
It's good. I love that you're explaining all of this because it's something where we're being educated. And I think that the more we educate and the more people listen and hear this and think, wow, I know someone that has been in that position working in reality, and they just thought, well, there's nothing else I can do. Because I think
That
that's kind of the
happens.
mindset of like, this is just me and my little old self against these huge, massive corporations and the NDAs and the contracts and everything. It's like they don't feel that they have any ground to stand and have a voice, when in reality, like you said, you were the content. You were the chosen victim to create this content. So I have so many people that have asked, especially now, because I feel like your relationship, your marriage, your breakup, everything from start to finish was crowded because the entire world was a part of it. And
It
it's
was.
also part of the breakup. When we think of our breakups, it's private. It's behind closed doors. We can block them on social media if we don't want to see them or don't want to hear about it. But I feel like with this kind of snowball effect of so many seasons coming out, I just saw you not long ago after season 6 aired.
Yeah.
They always tend to bring up cast members, so you're almost reliving everything, which doesn't help with mental health. So you're never completely disconnected, even though you're speaking up and speaking out, and you're having the control to say, yes, I'm talking to this, or I'm talking to this person, or I'm sharing my story here. Like you said, you can Google anywhere, and the world is still a part of your relationship, your marriage, your dating experience, your breakup, and now everything in between. So many people have asked because it's starting to kind of seem like, for those that maybe watched like season 5, season 6, it was this huge undertaking of people really wanting to go all the way back to the very beginning and rewatch
Mm.
seasons. And so many people have asked, and I was kind of curious too, the infamous notebooks, because it seems like everybody's writing everything down. Do they give you topics to discuss or talk about, or is it just blank pages that you guys can be creative?
So it's a mix, actually. So those notebooks they give you, it's so funny because you're right. Like, I've had more people ask about the notebooks lately. It's something that I think people are just starting to pick up on. Kind of like season
Mhm.
2, people are like, okay, what's up with the gold goblets? Right? It's
Oh my
like,
gosh.
yeah. Which, for those of you who don't know, it's twofold, but the main reason that they use them is so that they can edit out of order and no one can see where your drink level is. And then the other piece is they've become synonymous with the brand of Love Is Blind, right? So it's kind of it's a twofold there. But no, that's a great question. So they give you a notebook with your name on it, and then every day they collect them when you go back to your hotel room after filming. You are encouraged to take notes if you want. I infamously, created what I called the algorithm, which was like a ranking system, so that at the beginning I could keep everyone straight and who I like because it's a lot. You meet people first time for 7 minutes, right? So you're like speed dating essentially. And so they take those every night, and then they do put conversation starters in the back of the notebook each day. There's new ones that kind of grow and escalate as you go on. I know a lot of people use them. I think we maybe used them once or twice, but we had a pretty good flow and connection and conversation from the very beginning. So we didn't really need that. But you do take notes. You do not get to take those with you. So it's interesting because when you reflect on it, again, this isn't something you would think of going into it. You reflect on it, it was very clear that they were like reading those.
Mhm.
So anyone who's taking like legitimate notes or legitimate journal entries or anything like that, like those are definitely part of the story that they're crafting for you. And then I would also say that I had one back at my hotel room that I would write my thoughts in every night that I had brought with, just so that I could do them. I'm kind of like I've always been like a journal writing, getting things out kind of person, even though I don't do it in a structured journal kind of way very often. Although I did structure myself in those dark days. But um, so that yeah, those journals they're real and it's weird because they're like take notes, but don't take too many notes because it doesn't look good on camera. And it's just a very weird thing to try and navigate in the moment.
Yeah, very weird. Because I feel like in your season watching it, I mean, it wasn't something that you would see in every frame. Obviously, they edit, but I feel like as the seasons progress, that's the very first thing you see besides, of course, all of the goblets that they're now trying to manufacture, but you see that notebook, and I always wondered, like, are they giving you that sense of structure so that they can streamline it through all of the pods and kind of see who fits? Which brings me to the question, have you watched all the other seasons after yours?
No, I actually went season 3 came out, I watched the first episode, and I was like, "I can't watch this anymore." It's too there's a couple reasons, right? Like, and I've seen clips of stuff. I've talked to so many cast members that, like, I've had to research their story so that I don't go in and be like, "Who are you, and what happened to you?" And, so I'm in the know of what goes on, but just watching it is it's very heartbreaking to kind of relive that. And to your point earlier, that's one of the biggest challenges. And it's not just with the work I'm doing with UCAN, where I hear, other people's stories a lot. And I tell mine a lot and it's hard. I always feel a little bit awkward after I do it for like at least the rest of the day, if not a few days after. This week we had a big expose in the New Yorker that came out where Monday it dropped. So I think Monday at the end, what was that? May 20th that dropped. Um, I had spent probably like 4 hours over the course of interviews for several months, filling in the details both on and off the record to give context, right? And I read it on Monday and it like ruined my day, if I'm being honest. Where I'm sitting there and it's like the writer who, by the way, she did a phenomenal job. I mean, and it's so entertaining. And if you can, look at it, she's telling a story as opposed to just reporting a story, right? And So with that writing style, and there's a line in there about my voice perking up when I was talking about Danielle and the pods and what that experience was like. And I sat there and I'm like, I do perk up when I talk about that. And then it just kind of reminds me of how we didn't get to continue that story when we got to Mexico. And then our whole story shifted. And it's just, and then it's like, ugh. And then I'm like sad again. And then I miss her. And then it's like, could it have been different? And all of this stuff. And it really digs a lot of that up to tell it over and over and then to read it back and hear other people's interpretations of it. So, there's that element to it. But then there's the element of every 6 months, a new season comes out. And then my name's up there again. It's like, who's still together? Who's not? And then people go back and they watch it again. So then people start, DMing you and following you. And that's all great. Like, I don't mind that, but it is just like, you don't get to really move on the same way. And I'm still learning how to move on post show in this environment of every 6 months. It's just back up and then telling my story. I own that. I take responsibility for that. That's in my control, like you said, to who I'm going to share it with, who I'm not, when I'm going to do it, when I'm not. Um, but it does. It kind of like just brings your name up and brings up all the triggering and the trauma and the hurt every 6 months when there's a new show coming out.
Well, I know everyone's listening going, why did she do this now a year later? It's because I wanted to focus on the UCAN Foundation. It turned a year old in April. When we did this last year, it was very interesting because I can say, not just you perking up in regards to different conversations, but there's this sense of strength and courage and empowerment that you have now that you did not have last year. Even
Mhm.
just talking about the UCAN Foundation, it was almost like this. We're excited. This is coming. This is a great opportunity. But there was almost this reluctant wall and like this invisible boundary that was still there for protection. But now, like even today, you have that a year later of like, this is exactly what I learned. And I see so much growth in you a year later, not only just personal,
Thank
but
you.
professionally with the UCAN of we're helping so many people. We're now trying to push even harder. And I don't see that. I don't see that wall. I don't see that protective boundary today. And I'm
There was,
so
yeah,
proud
that's,
of you. That's
thank
amazing.
you. I appreciate that. And I can tell you it was scary, right? And um, I did get a cease and desist last year or some equivalent of that. And that was scary. And I remember so many times, and I actually still ask myself this, what's my why? Why am I doing this? And now having gone through this and see the change. And I remember like right away, I was like, when they had Nick Vile talk shit and name call, and I was just kind of like, whoa, I kind of viewed him as the final boss. Like you'd have to convince him, way later that this is an important cause. And they sent the final boss in round one. I was like, oh my gosh, this has some power, right? And then as time went on and I built my confidence and I started understanding the labor elements of it and understanding what my rights are and understanding what we can do and starting to see change and people trust us. And there's a conviction that I've developed from that. And, as I go and I think even a few months ago, and I'm like, why am I doing this? When the last season came out, why am I doing this? Why am I putting myself through this? And every time I get to that point, there's another thing that happens or another person that we help or someone says something and it's just what you need to hear in that moment. And I tell myself, now, or I'm trying to like accept the leadership role because someone told me, and I don't know if they're listening to this, they might, not that long ago, maybe a month ago now, was like, I trust you with this, my story, and I want to be led. And the amount of people that have said they trust me or us and they want to be led is a lot of responsibility that I don't take lightly. And what it's done is it's given me conviction to finish. I've been saying, finish this fucking story. And my story is not in the control of anybody but me. And I'm going to finish that fucking story. And that's going to be changing this industry with a whole lot of people that know we can do better. And we're going to leave it better than we found it. And we're going to make it better for the people that have yet to come.
Ooh, I got chills.
Hmm.
I've had a lot of reality. They're celebrities in their own right. I've had a lot of reality people on Instagram and Facebook and even the YouTube. After your episode aired last year, they reached out and they're like, "I think I might want to contact, but I'm not sure in regards to if I'm ready to do this. And what do you
Mhm.
think?" And it amazed me because I'm like, I'm just kind of the messenger and the middleman, and it was interesting to
Your
see the
platform is
growth.
important, bro.
Yeah, it's
That proves
amazing to
how
see that
important it is.
growth because seeing all of your social media and everything that you've been posting with UCAN Foundation, seeing the names and seeing those that are standing beside you because you guys are all standing together and you have a very similar story and a similar outlook and you're all pushing for change. I think it's incredible what you're doing. I really, really do.
Thank
So
you.
I
It's not
asked
just
you
me. It
this.
takes a team. Yeah, it takes
It
a
is.
big team.
So I asked you this last year because you were right on that verge of UCAN Foundation starting. And I think I know your answer. And I think it might be a little bit different than it was last year. Knowing what you know now, would you do it all over again?
Oh my gosh, I feel like my answer is probably exactly the same. This changes by the day. Um, yesterday I had a guest on my podcast, and it's really this last 2 weeks, um, maybe month, really the last month. I've been like thinking, like I said, what's my why to do this? Should I have this responsibility? I've got imposter syndrome, like, all of this stuff. And, what happens with this, all the normal anxiety of stuff. And it's scary. Like I told you before, like I'm shadow banned. My social media doesn't get reach. My podcast that I spend hours a week on doesn't get the reach that it should. Um, all of this stuff. And, it just makes you question, like, should I be doing this? And now I look back and I try to separate my relationship from the experience, even though they were very much intertwined. That relationship was the hardest loss ever, that I feel, as you probably picked up, I still feel every single day. And then, amplified every 6 months when a new season comes out. And so I still live with that loss, and I live with that sadness for the loss of Danielle and that relationship. But when I separate it from the experience and I have that conviction, I look at it and I'm like, I'm not a victim. As I said earlier, I'm going to take control of my story, and my story is this. So how can you regret something that is your story? So would I do it again? I think maybe future self would say, don't do it, man. But the living in it right now, and seeing the importance, and giving people, leveling up other people's voice, it makes it all worth it. I guess I think we'll see. Still TBD, probably. But what I was going to say, someone on my podcast yesterday is like, what's your legacy? Like, what do you want to be remembered by? And I figured this out like the last month or so, or last 2 weeks or so, where I'm like, what is my legacy? My legacy is taking my experience and making something better to serve somebody else to make it better. So if you can take, if I can take this experience and use it to serve others better, then that's going to be worth it to me when it's all said and done.
I think you've already started that because even when you Google, which I know you haven't Googled yourself in over a year, but everything that pops up when you Google your name is UCAN Foundation. It is not Love is Blind
Mm,
first. It is UCAN Foundation. So I think
that
you've gone very quickly into that shift, which is needed because they created a story, but you're actually creating what the narrative is supposed to be. So I love that for you.
Well, thank you for sharing that with me. That actually is heartwarming.
Don't go on Google.
I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to.
But I wanted to thank you for coming on again, reopening that wound, because like you said, it is something that it is an ebb and flow. Mental health, that's what it's about. And you are grieving a loss, and that can take a very, very long time because your expectation of what you really wanted in your life, this was your real life that you went on, and you were open to the experience. You were open to love. You found love, and you have that. And so reopening the wound is always constant when you're sharing your story. So very grateful. Can't believe it's been a year. But I'm very excited to see what the next year entails and brings because, like I said, you're killing the
We just
game.
book it
I
on the
mean,
calendar. Let's do a yearly.
yeah, why not? Because, yeah, when you Google your name, obviously it shows the show you were on, but it's what you're doing with that show now. So you're surpassing. It doesn't show Love is Blind. It shows UCAN Foundation. That's exactly where you're supposed to be.
Good. You want to know what I think is going to happen in a little conspiracy theory? I
Oh, I'm all
think
here for
I
it.
think there's going to be a Nick cast because they'll want to have the SEO of Nick Love is Blind be show focused. So there's my conspiracy for the day.
I'm here for it. We'll have to see if that conspiracy is true in the next year.
If not, I just gave him a great idea.
Right? Well, it was good seeing you again, and I'll put all your information in the bio description. Please follow and share, especially not only his social media. Get that shadow ban out of the way, but also make sure that you share because just like my platform, it was amazing to hear how many people reached out and said, you know what, he actually gave me the strength, the empowerment to get started, to speak my mind, no matter the contracts or the fear or the manipulation. So I think what we're doing, we can all be better as a community together and be stronger. So I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the platform.